The great crystal towers of Centauri Prime reached toward the purple sky like frozen lightning. Inside the tallest spire, the Galactic Council gathered for their monthly meeting. Representatives from dozens of species filled the circular chamber, their voices mixing into a constant buzz of different languages and sounds. Ambassador Kethvar stood at his designated spot, his four arms moving as he spoke. The Zelani were a proud race, tall and blue-skinned, with silver markings that showed their rank. Kethvar had served the council for 40 years. And today, he carried news that would close an old chapter of galactic history. Honored members, Kethvar began, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber's speakers. We gather today to discuss the final status of the human homeworld, designated as Sol 3, or Earth. A quiet settled over the chamber. Everyone knew about Earth. The small blue planet had been silent for exactly 200 years. No ships had left its system. No messages had been sent. Long-range scanners showed only empty space where human colonies once thrived. Our deep space monitoring stations report the same readings they have given us for the past 2 centuries, Kethvar continued. Earth remains surrounded by unknown energy fields that block all attempts at communication or scanning. No life signs can be detected. No ships have been observed entering or leaving the system. Counselor Vrex of the insect-like hive spoke next, her clicking voice translated by the chamber's systems. The humans showed promise in their early years with us. Their ships were crude, but effective. Their warriors fought well in the border wars. It is unfortunate that they could not survive their own violent nature. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. Many species remembered the humans. They had been newcomers to galactic civilization, arriving only 300 years ago, with primitive, faster-than-light drives and simple weapons. But they had learned quickly, adapting alien technology and making friends among the older races. Then came the signs of trouble. Reports from human colonies spoke of civil wars and resource conflicts. Human ships began attacking each other in space. Their government messages became angry and desperate. Finally, all human territory went dark. The energy fields appeared around Earth and its colonies, cutting off all contact with the outside galaxy. The Observation Committee has waited the full 200 years, as required by galactic law, Kethvar announced. We have given the humans every chance to re-establish contact or show signs of survival. They have not done so. Elder Tolmas of the Ancient Keepers raised his crystal staff. The Keepers were among the oldest species in the galaxy, and their words carried great weight. In my lifetime, I have seen 17 species rise and fall. The pattern is always the same. They grow too quickly, want too much, and destroy themselves before they can learn wisdom. The humans followed this path. What do you propose? Asked Counselor Zara, of the peaceful, tender race. Kethvar's silver markings flashed as he prepared to speak the formal words. The Galactic Council hereby declares the human species officially extinct. Their territories will be marked as quarantine zones. No ships will enter the Sol system or any former human colony. Earth will serve as a monument to a species that showed promise but could not overcome their destructive nature. The vote was quick and unanimous. Bureaucrats began updating star charts immediately. Trade routes that had avoided human space for 2 centuries became official. The quarantine markers would warn any ship to stay away from the dead worlds. But Earth was not dead. Deep beneath the Pacific Ocean, Admiral Minjun Park stood in the command center of New Seoul, one of humanity's greatest underwater cities. The walls were made of transparent aluminum, showing the ocean depths outside. Schools of fish swam past, some of them genetically enhanced to serve as living sensors for the city's defense systems. Minjun was tall and lean, his black hair showing silver at the temples. He wore the simple blue uniform of the Human Space Command, with no decorations, except for a small pin showing Earth surrounded by stars. At 62 years old, he had spent his entire life preparing for this moment. Admiral, said Captain Lisa Chen, approaching with a datapad in her hand. She was younger than Minjun, with the enhanced reflexes and improved genetics that all humans now possessed. The outer colonies report they are ready. The Mars shipyards have completed the final vessels. Luna Base confirms that all defense systems are operational. F. Minjun nodded as he looked at the reports. For 200 years, humanity had been hidden behind quantum fields that made their worlds invisible to alien sensors. During that time, they had changed. They had grown. They had learned from their mistakes and become something new. The old human governments that had fought and destroyed each other were gone. In their place stood a unified species that had spread throughout their solar system and beyond. Hidden colonies on distant worlds had grown into thriving civilizations. Technology that seemed like magic to their ancestors now powered their everyday lives. What about the first contact protocols? Minjun asked. Captain Sarah Chen has volunteered to lead the initial mission, Lisa replied. Her ship will be the first to drop the quantum shroud and reveal itself to galactic civilization. Minjun smiled slightly. Sarah Chen was one of their best captains, calm under pressure and skilled at diplomacy. If anyone could handle the shock of humanity's return, it would be her. The Council just declared us extinct, Minjun said, reading the intercepted transmission on his screen. They think we destroyed ourselves like so many species before us. Should we feel insulted? Lisa asked with a grin. No, Minjun replied, his voice serious. We should feel grateful. They gave us the time we needed to grow up. 200 years ago, they were right to worry about us. We were violent, divided, and dangerous. We probably would have destroyed ourselves or caused a galactic war. He walked to the great window that looked out into the ocean depths. Somewhere far above, alien ships moved through space, carrying goods and messages between 1,000 worlds. None of them knew that humanity watched and listened to everything. But we're not those humans anymore, Minjun continued. We learned to work together. We learned to build instead of destroy. We learned that the universe is big enough for everyone. Lisa joined him at the window. The colony ships report they're ready to begin the reveal. The defense fleets are in position. The diplomatic corps has rehearsed first contact procedures for decades. Minjun took a deep breath. The moment they had prepared for across 8 generations was finally here. Humanity would reveal itself to the galaxy once more. But this time, they would return as something the aliens had never seen before. A species that had chosen to grow up. Begin the sequence, he ordered. Let's show them what humanity became. Far above them, the quantum fields that had hidden Earth for 2 centuries began to fade. The stars awaited humanity's return. The trading station Nexus 7 hung in space like a massive metal flower, its docking arms extending in all directions. Ships from across the galaxy came here to trade goods, information, and services. The station had operated for over 300 years, serving as a neutral meeting point for species that might otherwise never interact peacefully. Station Commander Vexatal stood in the control tower, his red Zilani skin marked with the gold lines that showed his military rank. His forearms worked at different control panels as he supervised the busy traffic around the station. Merchant vessels, transport ships, and patrol craft moved in carefully controlled patterns. Commander, called sensor operator Kix from his station. I'm detecting an unknown ship approaching from Sector 7. The energy signature is strange. Vextal moved to the sensor station with quick steps. He had commanded Nexus 7 for 15 years and had seen every type of ship in the galaxy. Show me, he ordered. The main screen lit up with sensor data. A single ship approached the station, but the readings made no sense. The vessel appeared to be moving faster than light, but without using any known form of jump drive. It seemed to slide through space like liquid, bending reality around itself. Run a full spectrum analysis, Vextal commanded. Check the ship design, against all known configurations. Kix's 3 eyes widened as he studied the results. Commander, the computer says this ship design matches old human vessels from their early contact period. But that's impossible. Humans have been extinct for 2 centuries. A chill ran down Vextal's spine. He had been a young officer during the last days of human contact. He remembered their crude but effective ships, their strange customs, and their unsettling habit of finding solutions that more advanced species had missed. "Signal the ship," he ordered. "Standard greeting protocols." The communications officer, a bird-like Kirani named Shep, activated the long-range transmitters. "Unknown vessel. You are approaching Nexus 7 trading station. Please identify yourself and state your business." The response came immediately, clear and strong. The voice was human, unmistakably so. "Nexus 7. Control. This is Captain Sarah Chen of the Earth vessel New Horizon, requesting permission to dock for diplomatic purposes." The control room fell silent. Every crew member stared at the speakers as if they had just heard a ghost speak. Humans were extinct. Everyone knew that. The Galactic Council had made it official just hours ago. Vextal recovered first. "This is Commander Vextal of Nexus 7. Human ships have not been seen in galactic space for 200 years. Please explain how this is possible." Egional. Vextal. 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 Captain Chen's voice remained calm and professional. "Commander, I understand your surprise. Humanity has been absent from galactic affairs for some time. We chose to isolate ourselves while we worked through some internal problems. That period has now ended." "Internal problems?" Vextal repeated. "Your entire civilization went dark. No communications, no ships, nothing. We assumed you had destroyed yourselves in civil wars. We came close," Captain Chen admitted. "But we chose a different path. May we dock? I believe a face-to-face conversation would be more productive." Vextal looked around his control room. His crew waited for orders, but this situation was far beyond normal protocols. No one had planned for the return of an extinct species. "Stand by, Captain Chen. I need to make some calls." The next hour was chaos. Vextal contacted his superiors, who contacted theirs, all the way up to the Zelani High Command. Emergency meetings convened across the galaxy as the news spread. The humans were back, and no one knew what it meant. Finally, orders came down from the highest levels. "Allow the human ship to dock, but take every precaution." Vextal mobilized the station's defense fleet, 6 heavy cruisers that could destroy almost any threat. "Captain Chen," Vextal transmitted, "you are cleared to dock at Base 17. Be advised that our security forces will escort you." "Understood, Commander. Thank you for the welcome." The New Horizon approached the docking bay with impossible grace. Vextal watched from the observation deck as the ship settled into place without any visible propulsion system. The hull was smooth and dark, like polished obsidian, with no obvious weapons or sensors. "Scans show no energy weapons," reported his security chief. "But I'm reading power levels that should be impossible for a ship that size." The docking bay doors cycled open, and humanity walked among the stars again. Captain Sarah Chen stepped onto Nexus 7, wearing a simple black uniform with no decorations except for a small earth patch on her shoulder. She was shorter than most aliens expected humans to be, with dark hair pulled back and calm brown eyes that seemed to take in everything around her. Behind her came 4 crew members, each as quietly confident as their captain. They moved with an easy grace that suggested enhanced reflexes and improved physical conditioning. Their simple clothing showed no weapons, but sensors detected personal energy shields and other defensive technology. Vextal met them in the reception area, flanked by a full squad of security guards. He towered over the humans, his red skin and 4 arms making him look intimidating. But Captain Chen showed no fear as she approached. "Commander Vextal, she said, offering the traditional Zelani greeting gesture. "Thank you for allowing us to dock. I know this must come as quite a shock." Her perfect pronunciation of his language surprised him. Humans had always been good at learning alien customs, but this level of fluency suggested decades of study. "Captain Chen," he replied carefully, "the galaxy believed your species was extinct. Our long-range sensors showed no life signs from Earth or any human colony. How do you explain this?" Quote, Chen smiled, and Vexatal remembered that human expression. It could mean many things: humor, friendliness, or sometimes danger. "We developed some new technology during our isolation," she said. "Quantum stealth fields, among other things. We could see out, but you couldn't see in. We've been watching and learning for 2 centuries. Watching and learning what? How to be better than we were." The humans who left galactic civilization were young, violent, and divided. "We almost destroyed ourselves fighting over resources and territory. So we chose to step away and grow up." Vexastal studied her face, looking for signs of deception. But humans had always been hard to read, even with advanced sensors. "What do you want from us?" he asked. "To resume our place in galactic civilization," Chen replied. "But not as the species you remember. We've changed, Commander. We've learned from our mistakes and become something new." Before Vexastal could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the station. His communications officer's voice echoed through the halls. "All stations, alert. Long-range sensors detect a massive fleet approaching from Korthak space. Estimated arrival in 6 hours. Configuration suggests full military assault." Vextal's blood chilled. The Korthak hegemony were the galaxy's most feared military power. Brutal conquerors who had filled the power vacuum left by humanity's disappearance. If they were sending a full fleet, it meant war. Captain Chen listened to the announcement with apparent calm. Then, she reached into her pocket and pulled out a small device that looked like a crystal star. She pressed it once, and it pulsed with blue light. "What was that?" Vextal demanded. Chen looked up at him with those calm brown eyes. "I just told my people that we're needed. Commander, I suggest you evacuate any non-essential personnel from this station. Things are about to become very interesting." Far away, on ships hidden throughout the galaxy, identical devices pulsed with answering light. Humanity's return was no longer a secret. Warlord Groktul stood on the bridge of his flagship Bone Crusher, watching the stars stream past as his massive fleet moved toward Nexus 7. The Korthak leader was 7 feet tall, covered in gray scales and battle scars. His yellow eyes burned with the satisfaction of a predator who had found easy prey. "Report," he growled to his tactical officer. "Fleet status nominal, Warlord," came the reply. 400 ships, including 12 heavy destroyers, and the new planet killer cannon. We will reach the human vessel in 4 hours. Groktul smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. The Korthak had ruled this part of the galaxy for the past 2 centuries, ever since the humans disappeared and left a power vacuum. They were natural warriors, born to conquer and dominate weaker species. The news of a human ship returning had spread quickly through their intelligence networks. "1 ship?" Groktul laughed. "They send 1 pathetic ship after 200 years of hiding. These humans will learn what happens to species that challenge Korthak authority." His communications officer looked nervous. "Warlord, the ship's energy readings are unusual. Our sensors cannot identify the propulsion system or weapons." "Irrelevant," Groktul snapped. "No matter what tricks they have learned, they are still the same weak species that ran away from galactic civilization. We will destroy them quickly and claim their technology." The Korthak hegemony had built its power on conquest and fear. They enslaved weaker species, stripped resources from conquered worlds, and showed no mercy to those who opposed them. When humanity vanished, The Korthak had moved quickly to claim human territories and establish themselves as the dominant military force in the galaxy. But Graktul's confidence was not shared by every species in the galaxy. On the crystal towers of Zentari Prime, emergency sessions of the Galactic Council created panic and confusion. Ambassador Kethvar paced his office, his forearms gesturing wildly as he spoke into his communicator. "I don't care what the reports say. We just declared them extinct this morning. How can they have a ship at Nexus 7? On his screen, Counselor Vrex clicked her mandibles nervously. The transmission was clear. Kethvar, Captain Sarah Chen, Earth vessel, New Horizon. The voice patterns match old human records. But the energy signatures are impossible, Kethvar protested. No ship can move like that. The humans we knew had barely mastered basic faster-than-light travel. Elder Tolmas appeared on another screen, his ancient crystal staff glowing softly. Perhaps we were hasty in our declaration of extinction. The humans always had a talent for surviving impossible situations. The conversation was interrupted by an emergency alert. A junior aide rushed into Kethvar's office, his face pale with fear. Ambassador. Long-range sensors detect a massive Korthak fleet moving toward Nexus 7. Warlord Graktul himself leads the force. Kethvar's silver markings flashed with alarm. How many ships? 400, sir. Full military assault configuration. The office fell silent. Everyone understood what this meant. The Korthak had decided that humanity's return threatened their power. They were moving to eliminate the humans before they could re-establish themselves. We must warn them, Counselor Vrex said. Whatever our feelings about humanity's return, they do not deserve to be slaughtered without warning. It may already be too late, Elder Tolmas observed. The Korthak fleet will reach Nexus 7 inches a few hours. One human ship cannot stand against such force. Meanwhile, on Nexus 7, Captain Sarah Chen stood calmly in the station's command center as chaos erupted around her. Station personnel rushed to prepare defenses that everyone knew would be useless against a Korthak assault fleet. Commander Vextal approached her, his red skin dark with stress. Captain Chen, my superiors have authorized emergency evacuation. We can provide transport for you and your crew to safety. Chen looked up from the small device she held. More blue lights had appeared on its surface, pulsing in complex patterns. Thank you for the offer, Commander. But that won't be necessary. You don't understand, Vextal insisted. 400 Korthak ships are approaching. Your single vessel cannot possibly survive such an assault. You're right, Chen agreed calmly. One ship would be completely inadequate for this situation. She pressed another section of her device, and the lights changed from blue to gold. Throughout the station, long-range sensors began detecting energy signatures appearing from seemingly empty space. What did you just do? Vextal demanded. I called for backup, Chen replied simply. The first ship appeared as if reality had torn open to let it through. Then another. Then dozens more. They materialized from folded space, emerged from dimensional pockets, and dropped out of what looked like tiny black holes. Within minutes, over 200 human vessels surrounded Nexus 7. They came in all sizes, from small fighters that danced through space like living things to massive vessels that seemed to bend light around their hulls. None of them looked like the crude human ships that galactic civilization remembered. Impossible, whispered Vexistal's sensor operator. They just appeared from nowhere. Our long-range scanners showed nothing. Commander, Chen said, turning to Vextal with the same calm smile. I should probably explain something about our isolation period. We didn't just hide from the galaxy for 2 centuries. We used that time to learn, to grow, and to develop technologies that would have been considered impossible by our former standards. On his screens, Vexetl watched human ships take positions around the station with perfect coordination. Their movements were too precise, too synchronized for normal crews. How? He asked. Quantum communication networks, Chen explained. Enhanced human reflexes and intelligence. Ships that exist partially outside normal spacetime. We've had 200 years to solve problems that most species consider impossible. A new voice spoke over the communication system, calm and authoritative. Nexus 7. Control. This is Admiral Min Jun Park of the Earth Defense Fleet. We are here to ensure the safety of this station, and all species aboard it. Commander Vexistal stared at the screens showing the human fleet. Each ship radiated power levels that his instruments could barely measure. Captain Chen, who are you people? Chen's smile became warmer, more human. We're who humanity became when we chose to grow up, instead of destroy ourselves. Commander, I suggest you contact the approaching Korthak fleet. They're about to learn something very important about the price of threatening innocent beings. In space, Admiral Park's flagship Terra Ascendant moved into position at the center of the human formation. Its hull was like black glass, reflecting the stars with impossible beauty. Deep within the ship, quantum computers calculated possibilities and outcomes at the speed of thought. The Korthak were coming. Confident in their superior numbers and firepower, they had no idea that they were about to face a species that had spent 2 centuries learning how to turn the universe itself into a weapon. The reckoning was about to begin. Warlord Graktul's confidence shattered the moment his fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel near Nexus 7. His tactical screens showed an impossible sight. Over 200 ships that had appeared from nowhere, surrounding the trading station in perfect formation. "What are those vessels?" he roared at his sensor operator, his scaled fists clenching with rage. "Unknown ship types, Warlord," came the terrified reply. "Energy signatures unlike anything in our databases. They appear to be human in origin." Graktul's yellow eyes blazed. "Impossible. There should be one human ship, alone and defenseless. How did they multiply?" The truth was beyond anything the Korthak leader could understand. The human vessels hadn't traveled through normal space to reach this location. They had emerged from folded dimensions, stepped through quantum tunnels, and materialized from pocket universes that humanity had learned to create during their centuries of isolation. On the bridge of Terra Ascendant, Admiral Min Jun Park stood calmly before the main view screen. He wore the same simple blue uniform as his crew, with no decorations except the earth pin that marked him as one of humanity's protectors. His enhanced genetics had kept him young and sharp despite his decades of service. "Korthak fleet positioning suggests standard attack formation," reported his tactical officer, Lieutenant Sarah Kim. Her fingers danced over controls that responded to thought as much as touch. 400 ships, 12 heavy destroyers, 1 planet-killer weapon. Min Jun nodded. Standard Korthak doctrine. They rely on overwhelming firepower and intimidation. Signal Captain Chen on Nexus 7. Tell her to begin evacuation of non-essential personnel. "Admiral," interrupted his communications officer, "the Korthak flagship is transmitting on all frequencies. Let's hear what Warlord Graktul has to say." The voice that filled the bridge was harsh and threatening, translated from the Korthak language by advanced computers. "Human vessels, you are trespassing in Korthak space. Withdraw immediately or face total destruction. You have 1 minute to comply." Min Jun allowed himself a small smile. "Open a channel. Open a channel." His reply was calm and measured. "Warlord Graktul, this is Admiral Park of the Earth Defense Fleet. You are approaching a neutral trading station with hostile intent. We are here to protect all beings aboard that station, regardless of species. I suggest you reconsider your course of action." Graktul's laughter echoed through space. "You dare threaten the Korthak hegemony? We have ruled this sector for 2 centuries. While you humans cowered in darkness, stand aside or be destroyed." "I'm afraid I can't do that," Min Jun replied politely. "However, I can offer you and your crews safe passage home if you withdraw peacefully." The Korthak warlord's response was to open fire with every weapon his fleet possessed. What followed was unlike any battle in galactic history. The Korthak weapons, plasma cannons, quantum torpedoes, and antimatter bombs, struck the human ships with enough force to shatter moons. But the energies simply disappeared, absorbed by defensive systems that operated on principles the Korthak couldn't comprehend. "Impossible!" Graktul screamed, as his most powerful weapons proved useless. Nothing can withstand that much firepower. But humanity had learned to bend the laws of physics during their isolation. Their ships existed partially outside normal space, anchored in dimensions where energy could be redirected, absorbed, or simply made to stop existing. The Korthak bombardment was like trying to fight a storm with harsh words. The human response was surgical and precise. Instead of returning fire with destructive weapons, they deployed technology that simply shut down enemy systems. Korthak ships found their engines failing, their weapons powering down, their life support systems switching to emergency mode. "What are they doing to us?" demanded Graktul's tactical officer. "Unknown warlord. Our systems are failing one by one, but we detect no incoming weapons fire." The truth was that humanity had moved beyond crude destruction. Their weapons were designed to disable and capture rather than kill. Quantum field manipulators reached inside enemy ships and simply turned off their power systems. Molecular assemblers dissolved weapon components at the atomic level. Neural dampening fields put aggressive crew members to sleep without harm. Within an hour, the entire Korthak fleet was helpless, drifting in space with minimal life support. Not a single crew member had been killed, though their pride was thoroughly shattered. But the real shock came when Admiral Park opened channels to the disabled ships and began speaking to the crews in perfect Korthak, offering them something unprecedented in their warrior culture. "People of the Korthak fleet," his voice carried to every ship, "you have been taught that strength comes from conquest and domination. But we offer you the chance to learn a different way. Join us and discover what your species could become when it chooses to build instead of destroy." To Graktul's horror, many of his own crew members began to respond. The human admiral was not speaking only to Korthak warriors, but to the enslaved species that made up much of their fleet's workforce. Maintenance crews, engineers, and support staff who had spent their lives in bondage suddenly heard someone offering them freedom and dignity. "We have been watching your empire for 2 centuries, Park continued. "We know which among you fight because you choose to, and which fight because you must. Those who wish to leave are free to do so. Those who wish to stay and help us build something better are welcome." Across the Korthak fleet, entire sections began declaring their intention to defect. Engineers who had been forced to maintain weapons of conquest wanted to build ships of exploration. Scientists who had been enslaved to create new instruments of war dreamed of using their knowledge to heal and help. Even some of the Korthak warriors themselves found Park's words stirring something deep in their hearts. They remembered the stories their grandparents told of Korthak culture before the rise of the military empire. A time when their people had been explorers and builders, rather than conquerors. "This is mutiny," Graktul raged, but his words carried no power. His ship was disabled, his weapons useless, and his crew was listening to an enemy who spoke of hope instead of death. Admiral Park's next transmission was directed specifically at the Korthak warlord. "Graktul, you and those who choose to follow you are free to return to your empire. Take this message to your leaders. The galaxy is changing. The old ways of conquest and domination are ending. Those who adapt will thrive. Those who don't will find themselves increasingly alone." But Park wasn't finished. As the human fleet began accepting defectors and evacuating those who wanted to leave, something else emerged from the dimensional folds around Terra Ascendant. Ships that clearly weren't human appeared alongside the Earth vessels. Sleek vessels crewed by species that galactic civilization had written off as extinct. ancient artificial intelligences housed in crystalline hulls, even modified Korthak ships, flying human colors, crewed by defectors from previous encounters. Warlord, his sensor operator whispered in shock. I'm detecting ships from over 30 different species. Some of them have been extinct for centuries. The truth hit Graktul like a physical blow. During their isolation, humanity hadn't just developed new technology. They had become something unprecedented in galactic history, a species that rescued others instead of conquering them. They had found the survivors of extinct civilizations, the refugees from destroyed worlds, the rebels and freethinkers from oppressive empires. Humanity had built an alliance based on hope instead of fear. As the human fleet prepared to escort the willing defectors to safety, Admiral Park sent one final message to the remnants of the Korthak force. The galaxy thought humanity was extinct because we chose to disappear when we were young and violent. We return now because we have learned to be something better. The choice is before you. Evolve or be left behind. Graktul watched helplessly as half his fleet chose to leave with the humans, including his own nephew, who had grown tired of endless war. The Korthak Empire's reputation for invincibility was shattered, not by superior firepower, but by something far more dangerous. The promise of a better way to live. The humans departed as suddenly as they had arrived, folding back into hidden dimensions with their new allies and willing defectors. Behind them, they left a galaxy that would never be the same. Humanity had returned not as conquerors, but as liberators. And that made them the most dangerous force the galaxy had ever seen. 6 months after the incident at Nexus 7, the Galactic Council chamber buzzed with nervous energy. The same hall where humanity had been declared extinct now hosted an emergency session to determine the future of galactic civilization itself. Ambassador Jin-A Kim sat at the newly restored human delegation table. Her simple gray diplomatic robes, a sharp contrast to the elaborate ceremonial garments worn by other species. She was young by galactic standards, only 43 years old. But her dark eyes held the wisdom of a species that had learned from its mistakes. Around her, representatives from dozens of worlds whispered among themselves. The galaxy had changed dramatically since humanity's return. The Korthak Empire had fractured as subject species rebelled or simply walked away from their oppressors. Trade routes that had been controlled by military might for centuries now operated under new principles of cooperation and mutual benefit. The session will come to order, announced Council Speaker Veltar, his crystal voice carrying clearly through the chamber. The elderly keeper had seen many changes in his 1,000-year lifespan, but nothing like this. Elder Tolmas rose from his position among the keepers, his ancient staff glowing softly. We gather today to address the fundamental questions raised by humanity's return. Their actions have disrupted the established order of our galaxy. Some call this liberation. Others call it chaos. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. The past 6 months had indeed brought chaos, but not the destructive kind that many feared. Instead, it was the chaos of growth, of old systems breaking down to make room for something new. Ambassador Kethvar stood to address the assembly, his silver markings now dulled with age and stress. The Zelani Empire has observed humanity's actions carefully. They have made no territorial claims, issued no demands for tribute, and taken no actions that could be considered aggressive conquest. Instead, interrupted Councillor Vrex, her clicking voice sharp with frustration, they have undermined the stability that has kept our galaxy functioning for centuries. Species that were properly governed by stronger powers have abandoned their duties. Trade agreements that ensured order have been dissolved. Jin-A listened patiently as species after species voiced their concerns. The complaints were always the same. Humanity's return had disrupted the old ways of doing things. Empires that had relied on subject peoples suddenly found their populations leaving for human-sponsored colonies. Military alliances built on mutual fear discovered that their enemies were more interested in trade than conquest. Finally, Speaker Veltar called upon the human representative. Ambassador Kim, The Council would hear humanity's response to these concerns. Janae rose gracefully, her voice carrying clearly without any need for amplification. Honored members, we have listened carefully to your concerns. You speak of stability and order as if these things are good in themselves, regardless of the cost to those who live under them. She activated a small holographic projector that displayed images from across the galaxy. This is the Xerion system, where the Marn Republic enslaved an entire planet to mine rare crystals. The workers lived in underground tunnels, never seeing sunlight, dying young from lung diseases. The system was stable for over a century. The image changed. This is that same system today. The miners are now free citizens of a cooperative mining operation. They work shorter hours, share in the profits, and their children attend schools instead of waiting for their turn in the mines. The crystal output has actually increased because motivated workers are more productive than slaves. Counselor Vrex's mandibles clicked angrily. You speak of individual cases. What about the greater good? What about the systems that kept our galaxy functioning? Janae smiled. That uniquely human expression that could convey so many meanings. Counselor, we have spent 2 centuries studying your functional galaxy. Would you like to know what we observed? She didn't wait for an answer. The hologram changed again, showing star charts and economic data. 17 major wars in 2 centuries. Over 40 billion beings living in slavery or forced servitude. 36 species driven to extinction by resource wars or conquest. This is the stability you wish to preserve? Elder Tolmas tapped his staff thoughtfully. What alternative do you propose, Ambassador Kim? The strong have always ruled the weak. This is the natural order. With respect, Elder, that is the lazy order, Jin-A replied. It's simpler to take what you want than to build something together. But easier doesn't mean better. She gestured, and the hologram showed new images. Space stations that seemed to grow like living things, ships that moved through dimensions most species couldn't even perceive, cities that existed in multiple realities simultaneously. During our isolation, we learned that the universe is far stranger and more wonderful than any of us imagined. There are resources enough for everyone, if we're willing to work together to find them. There are solutions to every problem, if we're brave enough to try new approaches. Ambassador Kethvar leaned forward. You speak of cooperation, but cooperation requires trust. How can we trust a species that hid from us for 2 centuries, then returned with technology that makes our greatest achievements look primitive? Jin-A nodded respectfully. A fair question, Ambassador. We don't ask for your trust. We offer to earn it. Every technology we've developed, every discovery we've made, we're willing to share freely. But not as gifts, from superior to inferior, as exchanges between equals. She activated another function of her device, and suddenly every representative in the chamber received a data packet containing blueprints, scientific theories, and technological specifications. Quantum energy tap systems that can provide unlimited clean power. Medical nanotechnology that can cure most known diseases and extend lifespans. Agricultural techniques that can make any world fertile. Communication networks that allow instant contact across any distance. We offer all of this freely, with only one condition. The chamber fell silent, waiting for the catch that everyone was certain must exist. The condition is that these technologies cannot be used to harm or oppress others. They are gifts for species that choose to build rather than destroy. To help rather than conquer. Counselor Zara of the peaceful tender race spoke for the first time. How can you enforce such a condition? Jin-A's smile became warmer. We can't. And we won't try. That would make us no better than the old empires. Instead, we trust that given the choice between building and destroying, most beings will choose to build. And for those who don't, well, the galaxy is changing. Oppressive regimes are finding it harder and harder to maintain control when their subjects can simply leave for better options. Elder Tolmas studied the data packet he had received. These technologies, they would change everything. The entire structure of galactic civilization would be transformed. Yes, Janae agreed simply. The question is whether we transform it together or whether we cling to old ways that have already begun to crumble. She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of representatives from dozens of different species. Humanity doesn't seek to rule this galaxy. We don't want your worlds, your resources, or your submission. We simply want to be part of something larger than ourselves. A galactic community based on cooperation rather than conquest. The debate that followed lasted for hours. Some species embraced humanity's vision immediately. Others resisted, fearing the loss of traditional power structures. But slowly, gradually, consensus began to emerge. The old galaxy was already dead, killed by its own contradictions and cruelties. The only question was, what would replace it? As the session finally drew to a close, Speaker Veltar called for a preliminary vote on humanity's proposal to establish new protocols for galactic cooperation. The result was not unanimous. It never could be in a chamber representing such diverse interests. But it was decisive. The galaxy chose to try something new. Months later, Jinai stood in the observation deck of New Geneva Station, one of humanity's diplomatic facilities orbiting a neutral star. Through the transparent aluminum walls, she could see ships from across the galaxy arriving and departing. Traders, diplomats, explorers, and refugees, all moving freely in a space that belonged to no single species. Captain Sarah Chen joined her at the window, now wearing the uniform of the Galactic Cooperative Fleet. The Korthak delegation arrived this morning, she reported. 3 ships, full of engineers and scientists, who want to help design the new colony ships. Janae nodded. Even the Korthak were changing, though slowly. Warlord Graktul still ruled what remained of their empire, but his influence shrank every day as his people chose cooperation over conquest. Any word from the deep space expeditions? Janae asked. Admiral Park reports first contact with the Vegan Collective next month. They seem interested in our proposals for mutual cooperation. And the archaeological teams have found evidence of 3 more extinct civilizations that might have left survivors in hidden colonies. Janae smiled as she watched a ship from Earth dock alongside a vessel from the former Korthak territories. Human and alien crew members worked together to transfer supplies and personnel, their differences in species meaning far less than their shared commitment to building something better. You know, Sarah said quietly, when we first returned to the galaxy, I wondered if we were making a mistake. 200 years of peace and growth, and we chose to get involved in galactic politics again. And now? Sarah gestured toward the docking bay where humans and aliens worked side by side. Now, I think we made the only choice we could. We learned how to be better than we were. How could we keep that knowledge to ourselves? Outside the station, the stars shone with the promise of infinite possibilities. Somewhere among them, new species were taking their first steps toward the stars. Ancient civilizations were awakening from long hibernations. And on 1,000 worlds, beings who had lived under oppression were breathing free air for the first time. The galaxy had thought humanity was extinct. They were wrong. Humanity had simply learned how to live. And now they were teaching the rest of the universe what that truly meant.